Once you go to new document, under title, call it postcard. Inches on width, we're going to do 7. The height, we're going to do 5. Resolution 300, 8-bit. Leave it at RGB color. Background content, transparent. Press create. So once you open up the document, you're going to want to hit the type tool with keyboard shortcut letter T. We're going to draw out a text box the entire width of the document, and we're going to use the shorthand of the state or city. So Washington, D.C. or was D.C. So if it doesn't fit, you can change the point size at the top, or on the left-hand side, or on the right-hand side in the properties panel for the characters, we can increase the point size. So all you have to do is hold the arrow key and it'll keep on scaling up to fit. This number will depend on the amount of letters you have, but you want to make sure you have enough space on the sides to fit. So also when it comes to the font you choose, you want to make sure you are choosing a thick font. So T for type, click on the text box, highlight it all, and then go to your character size. And then you can choose a thick font. In this case, I'm going to use Impact, Arial Black, Futura, Bold. It really depends on whatever font you see fit, but the thicker the font, the better. So I'm going to choose this font, but I'm going to have to scale it down slightly some more. So I'm going to maybe put this at 140. Perfect. So now that we have our letters taken care of, so we're going to go File, Place Embedded, and then in your project folder, you're going to want to choose at least 5 different images to place, but we're going to do it one by one. So I'm going to choose this image first, let it place, hit enter or return to OK the placement. And now we're going to set it up using the clipping mask. So the image is going to be clipped by the type underneath. In Photoshop, it goes from top to bottom. In Illustrator, it goes from bottom to top, meaning whatever's on top is going to be clipped by what's underneath, and whatever is underneath is going to be clipped by what's on top. Photoshop, it goes downward. So right click on the layer, and we're going to go to Create Clipping Mask. So once you create the clipping mask, you can press Control T. Control T is the keyboard shortcut to transform or the scale. So we're going to scale it down to fit just roughly in one letter. Hit enter to OK the transformation. And now we're going to do this for each letter, so each letter gets an image. Now note, when you're clipping an image to a text, we can stack the clipping masks because the layer beneath this image is already clipped by the type layer. So we're just going to continue to clip all the way down to the bottom of the text layer. So we can put as many images as we want using only one layer for the clipping layer. And our overlap is okay. But we're going to just continue placing the three other images. So now that we have all the images clipped to the text layer, we're going to then add a layer mask to each layer because we're going to mask away the overlapping elements. So now we're going to start with the top layer, which is the C, working in reverse since we stacked it from left to right. We're going to maneuver this picture into position, and then I'm going to simply hit B for brush, making sure that it's the black, making sure that my hardness is at 0%. I'm going to then mask away slightly so it looks like it's merging into the layer, or the mask away the overlapping image onto the D. Same thing, I'm going to maneuver to where I want the D to be, image in the D, click on the layer mask, and then mask away the letter S, leaving some areas on this to be overlapping of the image. Now you can put more than one image on each letter, for example, file place, but make sure when you place on the top. File, place embedded, So now that you have all the images placed, now we can jump back over to the type layer. We're going to click on the top layer again. We're going to go to File, Place Embedded one last time, and then we're going to click on an image we want to use as our background image. So making sure this takes up the full width and height of the actual document. And then now we want to drag this layer to the bottom, meaning underneath the text layer, so it can then become the background image. Now we're going to go to Filter, we're going to go to Blur, we're going to go to Gaussian Blur, and we're going to put it at a 6 pixel radius. If you want it to be more blurry, obviously you would just increase it, versus less, you would decrease it. But 6 is a good number, so you can see what it is, but it's not detracting. You can actually see what 8 looks like. 8 works. You can see what it is, but it's not detracting from the main images on the postcard. So press OK. And then now, jumping over to the text layer, double click on the layer itself to pull up the Layer Style menu. Now, in the Layer Style menu, we're going to do a few things here. So first, we're going to click on Stroke. And by default, it's whatever you set before. So I'm going to make it a red stroke since Washington, D.C.'s colors are red and white. And then now on the size, meaning the thickness, we can decrease it or increase it. Now, depending on the position, you can put it on the inside, in the center, meaning it's equally on the outside and inside, or you can put it all the way to the outside. In this case, I would have to decrease it. So in this case, I'm going to put mine in the center. So it's going to be 5 pixels in, 5 pixels out, since it's cutting the pixel amount in half based on the radius. So then now I'm going to jump over to the inner shadow. So we're going to put a slight inner shadow on the actual letters. So lower the opacity slightly. And now the size can change depending on what size works best for your letters. But we just want a subtle shadow. As you can see, if you uncheck it, this is what it looks like with it off. This is like this is what it looks like when it's active. On, off, on. So it's a very subtle difference depending on how you want to do it. I'm going to put mine at 20%, put my distance at 60%, and put my size at, say, 50. And then now we're going to also do a drop shadow, meaning the traditional drop shadow on the outside. So I'll put my opacity at 90, put my distance at, say, 15, leave my size at 80. So it looks like it's hovering over. Press OK. And then now we're going to want to click on the rectangle tool. And we're going to make a rectangle the entire width of this document and height to match. Now the reason we're doing this is because we want to clip the image. So we're going to click on the rectangle layer, drag it again beneath the image, background image layer, and then right click on the image layer for the background, and then create clip and mask. We're doing this because we're going to put a stroke on the rectangle tool to give the illusion of it having a white border around it. Because if you were to do that layer style on the image hangs over, so the stroke would be on the outside of the image plane, not the actual artboard itself. In this instance, we're able to clip it with a rectangle that's the same size as the artboard, which will then allow us to do a stroke on the inside, make it white on the inside, So say increase it to 50. Well, let's say 40. And then we can also do an inner shadow if you want to, but very subtle. And press OK. So now we're done with the postcard for the most part. So we're going to organize these layers. So I'm going to click on my type layer, hold shift, click on my top image layer, and then I want to click on the folder or group icon. And now it's all linked in one group. So meaning if you turn it off, we hide the actual image itself. So now we're going to right click again, holding shift onto the top, and then hold shift to click on the type tool, right click on it, and then we're going to press link. So when you link layers, whenever you move this group, they will move in tandem together, because you don't want to move the text layer, and that was going to change the perspective on the actual clip. So then we're going to type out welcome to, so click on T for type, drag out another text box, and you may have to make sure you change the point size to something smaller. So I'm going to type out welcome to, and you can choose a more serif font, increase the size. Now you can also do a layer overlay in the layers option. So double click on the text box, double click on the text box layer, and now you can click on color overlay, and you can choose a different color here without having to actually change the color of the text itself. And then I'm going to throw a drop shadow on here as well, a smaller drop shadow, decrease the distance, slightly decrease the opacity. So this way you can experiment with different colors within the layer style, as well as adding other effects at the same time versus changing the font color and then jumping into here and having to change it again separately. So now because you've linked the layers, you can move this around, or you can leave it in the center without having to worry about editing the actual image. Now, if you want to go in and change how this looks, you would just have to go in and unlink, so highlighting it, right clicking on it, and go to unlink layers in order to then move them separately again. So once you finish everything, you want to make sure you save it. So Control Shift S to save as. You're going to want to save it as a Photoshop file and also a JPEG file for when you make it into a mockup. And that concludes the tutorial on how to make a postcard using the layer style, layer mask, and clipping mask tools in Photoshop.